Shocking truth, exhausted maid caught sleeping, then does something that haunts forever. In the lavish mansion of the Whitmore family, secrets hid in plain sight. The heavy drapes whispered tales of opulence during the day, but come nightfall, shadows stretched long like fingers clawing at the walls. A maid, Clara, swept through the grand halls as the clock struck midnight. Her exhaustion was palpable, like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. She barely had the strength to hold her mop, each stroke more sluggish than the last. The gasping breaths of the elderly housekeeper echoed behind her, a constant reminder of the relentless rumors swirling through the estate, rumors about what happened when the rich slipped into their slumber. As the moon hung high, a sudden silence fell. The creaking of floorboards ceased. Was it the weariness clouding Clara's mind, or something more sinister? She glanced around, heart pounding. Every corner felt like a threat, and the eerie hush was suffocating. And then, in a moment of sheer exhaustion, she leaned against a door frame, eyes fluttering closed, surrendering to the sleep that clawed at her. It felt like just a second until a loud clang jolted her awake. The sound sliced through the house, chilling her to the bone. Dread spiraled in her gut. Had someone seen her? The tension in the air thickened, and Clara's fear turned to panic. What if she was discovered in such a vulnerable state? But before her mind could spiral further, a shudder coursed through the room. Was that a whisper? I heard her sleepin', murmured a hushed voice from the shadows. Clara's heart raced as she strained to listen. The thought of someone lurking, watching her vulnerability, filled her with a fright she couldn't shake. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She felt the chill of two pairs of eyes right on her, piercing through the dark. As she turned, she realized she wasn't alone. A dim figure lingered at the edge of the hallway, cloaked in a shroud of uncertainty, barely illuminated by the flickering light of a dying lamp. Clara's throat tightened. Who were they? Why were they there? Just then, the figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar face. But was it really them? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clara squinted into the shadows, her heart pounding louder than ever. As the figure stepped closer, she caught a glimmer of recognition and dread washed over her. The whispers she dismissed grew into an avalanche of anxiety, threatening to pull her down. Was this figure a friend or an enemy? And what did they want from her? Panic clawed at her throat. She felt trapped between sleeping her life away and this haunting figure, caught in a web of uncertainty. Darkness surrounded them like a thick fog, each second dragging out, the tension spiraling. Just then, she caught a faint noise behind her. A door creaked open. Was it an escape or a trap? What lay ahead could change everything, or it could seal her fate forever. The figure emerged from the shadows, a face Clara thought she knew all too well. It was Sophie, the youngest daughter of the Whitmore family. Her eyes were wide, sparkling with something between mischief and menace. Clara, Sophie whispered, a sly smile creeping across her lips. What a surprise to find you here, sleeping on the job. The casual tone was a mask for something more ominous. Clara straightened up, heart racing at Sophie's unexpected appearance. I didn't hear you come in, she stammered, her palms clammy against the mop handle. The fear that gripped her was suffocating. What did Sophie want? This is not a good place for a nap, don't you think? Sophie stepped closer, letting the half-light expose her face. Too calm, too curious. You know what they say about what happens to those who sleep when they shouldn't. She leaned in, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper that made Clara shiver. It's like inviting spirits into your dreams. Shadows dance when the sun goes down. Clara swallowed hard. What do you mean? The words barely escaped her lips. Let us just say. I've seen things in this house. Things that would curl your toes. Sophie's voice played like a cracked record, echoing the unease Clara felt in her gut. Do you want to see them? Or would you rather live in ignorance? At that moment, Clara was torn. She wanted to flee, to escape this twisted game Sophie seemed to be playing, but her morbid curiosity pulled her in. What things? The family's secrets, Sophie said, as her eyes darted back towards the confident glow of the golden gilded walls. This mansion is more than just a home for the wealthy. It's a tomb, a resting place for dreams never realized and shadows never acknowledged. Before Clara could form a response, Sophie turned sharply. Follow me, she beckoned, gliding deeper into the darkness of the mansion. There was no room for hesitation. Clara's feet moved almost on their own. A powerful force dragged her forward, a mix of fright and an irresistible urge to uncover the truth. They slipped past doorways, where memories lingered like ghosts. Each step deeper resonated in Clara's soul, echoing her fears and hopes. She could hear a distant murmur, a forgotten lullaby that sent chills racing down her spine. Do you hear that? Clara asked, voice barely above a whisper. Sophie nodded, eyes gleaming. It's the echoes of the past stories begging to be uncovered. Things that were buried with those who lived here. She paused, then fixed Clara with an intense gaze. Are you ready to face them? As Clara opened her mouth to respond, a bone-chilling scream sliced through the air, sending a shock of terror rippling through her. It was a sound laced with pain, not just a solitary scream, but a chorus of voices tangled together in their despair. Thick silence enveloped them after, it felt heavy, almost tangible. See? Sophie said softly, her eyes dark, reflecting shadows and revelations. The house isn't just alive. It remembers. Before Clara could react, Sophie grabbed her arm tightly and pulled her through the now slightly open door behind them. The room inside felt colder, the air thick with dread. What Clara saw next turned her blood to ice. Behind the door lay a hidden chamber illuminated by cracked candles, and at the center, a faded family portrait hung crookedly on the wall, faces twisted with torment. Clara gasped, heart pounding as the realization hit her hard. This was more than just a family secret, it was a doorway to their buried truths. But the question hung heavy in the air. What had she stumbled into? The emotions swirled inside her: fear, curiosity, dread, but one question resonated above all others: what terrible fate awaited those who dared to uncover the Whitmore family's dark history? The air grew heavier, and Clara's pulse thundered in her ears as the flickering candlelight danced, illuminating twisted faces in the portrait that seemed to be reaching out, their mouths open in silent screams. The words Sophie whispered played back in Clara's mind: the house remembers. What is this place? Clara managed to croak, trying her best to hold back the torrent of fear that threatened to erupt. Sophie smirked, an unsettling grin that sent chills down Clara's spine. This is where the Whitmores buried their truths, Clara. Scandals, heartbreaks, and tragedies, it all lives within these walls. Are you not curious? The walls seemed to lean in, listening, waiting. Clara's instincts screamed at her to leave, to run from this madness, but the air buzzed with an inexplicable pull. Why are you showing me this? She whispered, her voice barely a thread against the weight of the darkness. Because Sophie leaned closer, her breath brushing against Clara's ear, sending a shiver through her entire being. You deserve to know the truth, just like I did. Before Clara could form a response, Sophie lifted her hand, pointing to an ornate chest resting in the corner, cloaked in dust. If you want to know their secrets, you must open that. The chest's presence loomed ominously, as if it were a beast waiting to consume the unwary. Clara gulped, but she felt something inside her awaken, a flicker of courage intertwined with dread. What's inside? Sophie's smile widened, her eyes glinting. The evidence of their sins. But remember, Clara, the truth is a double-edged sword. It could set you free, but it could also destroy you. The faint echoes of the house's sorrow filled the air, and Clara hesitated, her hand hovering over the aged latch of the chest. What if I don't like what I find? Not knowing is the worst kind of fear. Sophie's voice was a low, soft echo. Besides, don't you want to know how it all ends? How the Whitmores came to this fate? With her heart in her throat, Clara made the decision. She unlatched the chest, and it creaked open with dismal reluctance. Inside lay piles of brittle papers, yellowed photographs, and a glimmering object that caught the flickering light, an intricately crafted locket. It seemed to pulse with energy, almost alive. Clara's fingers trembled as she lifted it, feeling an intense heat radiating from within. Open it, Sophie urged, excitement bubbling beneath her calm facade. You have to see what's inside. As Clara unclasped the locket, a rush of wind filled the room, extinguishing the candles. Darkness enveloped them, and Clara's breath hitched. She could almost feel shadowy figures swirling around them, their whispers rising in a cacophony of despair and warning. You shouldn't have opened it. Sophie screamed, her playful demeanor slipping, revealing a flicker of fear that nearly mirrored Clara's. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hall, thundering off the walls like a warning. Clara dropped the locket, her heart racing as she turned to Sophie, but Sophie was no longer at her side. Instead, shadows flickered and darted in the corners. Clara. The urgency in her name pierced through the dark. We have to get out of here. A knot of panic twisted inside Clara as she realized she was alone in the suffocating darkness. Shadows pushed closer, and an oppressive fear wrapped around her like a vice. She sprinted toward the door, but it slammed shut, the sound reverberating with the finality of a grave. What awaits you now, Clara? Came Sophie's distant voice from the darkness, layered with something sinister and urgent. Clara's heart pounded as terror washed over her. What horrors would unleash if she remained? What had she awakened in this ancient tomb of secrets? And where was Sophie? As the darkness pressed in around her, Clara gritted her teeth, preparing to battle not just the shadows but her own fears. But the real battle was yet to come, and it hung in the air like storm clouds, ready to unleash their fury. Would she uncover the truth, or would the Whitmore darkness consume her whole? Clara's feet skidded across the dusty floor as she spun to face the closed door. Panic clawed at her throat, and her breath quickened. The shadows loomed larger, their forms shifting with malicious intent, whispering secrets that were likely better left unspoken. Get a grip, Clara, she whispered to herself, trying to anchor her racing thoughts. You opened the locket. You can handle this. But deep down, she wasn't sure. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the far side of the room, as if something from the chest had broken free and was now crashing through the darkness. The noise shook through her, pulling her attention away from the door, luring her forward into an unknown peril. Come on, come on. She muttered under her breath, her heart thumping like a war drum. Each step toward the sound felt like a challenge, every inch weighted with the heavy dread hovering in the air like a storm cloud. As she approached, the shadows writhed around her feet, whispering incoherent words that chilled her spine. She focused on the source of the noise, her eyes straining to pierce through the darkness. Just as she reached what felt like the edge of her sanity, an arm shot out from the shadows, a thin, bony arm that tugged at her sleeve. Help, it rasped, the voice barely more than a breath. Clara recoiled, her instincts screaming to run, but she couldn't help but hear the desperate plea. Who are you? She stammered, her heart pounding against her ribcage. Was it one of the Whitmores? A remnant of their sorrow? I was like you, the voice continued, an echo from the past. Trapped, searching for the truth. Now I'm lost. You must listen. Clara hesitated, torn between survival and curiosity. The shadows coiled around the figure, twisting like smoke, obscuring the face just enough to keep her on edge. What do you want? Find the pages, the voice urged, the shadows shivering with urgency. They hold the last of our stories. The truth of their sin. You must know, or else you will join us. Forever. A chill ran through her, and the darkness felt heavier, more alive. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but against all logic, something surged in Clara, a need to understand. Where do I find them? Below. Suddenly, the shadows surged, and the figure melted away, leaving Clara in a swirl of confusion and intensifying dread. Below. What does that mean? She shouted, her voice cracking with a mix of fear and frustration. But the shadows offered no answers, only a suffocating silence. Desperate, Clara raced to the large bookcase at the far wall, feeling the rough wood against her fingertips. She pushed against it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic bubbled up again. If there was a way down, she needed to find it. With a renewed determination, she began to scan the spines of books, her fingers flitting across titles long forgotten. Every moment felt like time slipping away, the chance of escape swirling further from her grasp. Heart pounding, she yanked on the first book that looked out of place, an ornate leather-bound tome, covered in dust. When the book came free, the wall trembled, then groaned as if awakening from a long slumber. What? Slowly, the bookcase creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into impenetrable darkness. The air that wafted up was stale and cold, like a forgotten tomb. Do I really want to know what's down there? She whispered to herself, the shadows thickening around her. In response, with a deep breath, Clara took a step forward. The staircase beckoned her like a siren, alluring yet menacing. She couldn't turn back now. With each step, the darkness pressed closer, drawing out her fears and entangling them in the folds of her heart. What awaited her below? Would she uncover the Whitmore secrets, or would she discover something far more sinister? Clara took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. There was no turning back now. Each footfall echoed in the narrow space as Clara descended the stairs, the scent of mildew and decay wrapping around her like unwanted arms. The walls felt close, nearly oppressive, as if they were pressing her back up into the light. She shivered, the cold wrapping around her spine like an embrace from the grave. Don't think about it, she whispered, focusing on the soft glow from her phone, its screen illuminating just enough to keep her from stumbling. But the shadows danced, taunting her, flickering just out of reach. She paused at the bottom step, her shoes hitting something soft, a pile of dust-layered papers scattered haphazardly across the floor. Clara's breath hitched as she knelt to pick them up. They were pages torn from old books, their edges frayed and stained, whispering the forgotten histories of the Whitmore family. The names barely legible, they seemed to call out to her with silent screams of sorrow and loss. Suddenly, a chilling gust swept through the passageway, sending a shudder up her arms. Clara tensed, heart racing. The shadows pooled against the walls, swelling like a living mass, urging her to leave. But something within her pushed back an insatiable curiosity. Find the pages, the voice echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of what she needed to do. As she scanned the damp pamphlets, one name caught her eye, Eliza Whitmore. The ink was faded, but it glistened with a hint of something dark, a secret begging to be uncovered. It was followed by a series of notes, warnings, and bizarre symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. She turned another page, shivering as chilling phrases leaped out: betrayal, sacrifice, and madness. Clara's heart felt like it was about to burst. The words were stark, painting a picture of despair. How could one family hold such darkness? What happened here? Stop reading. You're in over your head. A voice hissed from the shadows, deep and jagged, like broken glass against stone. Clara's heart dropped as she whipped around. Who is there? She gasped, her voice trembling. The shadows shifted, elongating with an unnatural life, creating shapes that twisted and turned just beyond her gaze. It's not safe. You're meddling with forces you don't understand. The truth of the message settled in her gut, a heavy weight she could hardly bear. Yet in that moment, the intensity of revelation sparked a flicker of defiance within her. I need to know. The pages hold the answers. She shouted, her voice sharp against the stillness. The shadows paused, as if considering her resolve, then surged forward, swirling into a tempest of cold. Clara staggered back, papers flying from her hands as she grasped the banister, fighting to maintain her balance. Suddenly, a blinding light burst from the depths of the darkness, illuminating the corridor. Clara squinted, heart thundering, but all she could make out was a vast chamber ahead, filled with flickering lamps and an old, weathered table piled high with books. "Come closer if you dare," the voice beckoned again, this time softer, almost soothing, but her instinct screamed danger. Clara hesitated, heart pounding in her ears, unable to discern the truth. Did she step into the room? What if it was a trap? Breath hitching, she made the final decision that would change her life forever. As she stepped across the threshold, the shadows slithered behind her, crawling toward the light. What lay ahead? What revelation awaited her in the heart of the Whitmore estate? Just as Clara crossed the threshold, the echoes of laughter, joy, and sorrow, the very essence of the Whitmore legacy, began to unfurl around her like a shroud. She felt an eerie presence lurking, waiting for her to uncover its secrets or seal her fate. What would she find on the other side? And would it be the truth she sought, or the end of her story? The air in the chamber felt thick, almost suffocating, as Clara stepped inside, the vibrations of the past swirling around her like a ghostly waltz. The flickering lamps cast eerie shadows on the walls, dancing figures that seemed to mock her presence. She squinted into the dim light, honing in on the old table at the center, its surface cluttered with books, dusty trinkets, and a solitary, ornate mirror that glimmered enticingly. Her heart hammered in her chest as she approached. Every step was laden with dread and anticipation. What wisdom or horror lay hidden among the memories trapped in this room? As she leaned closer to the books, titles began to emerge from the obscurity: The Dark Legacy of the Whitmores, Curses and Blessings, and The Price of Knowledge. Her fingers trembled as they brushed against the covers, feeling the energy radiate through the cracked spines. Just then, a low whisper echoed in the air, distinct yet indistinct, like the rustling of dry leaves. "Discover, illuminate, the truth lies ahead." Clara's breath hitched again. The allure of the voice pulled her deeper. She picked up a book at random, its weight suggesting it held centuries of secrets. Opening it, she was greeted by intricate drawings of arcane symbols and passages filled with words that sent a chill down her spine. The bloodline must be revered, but at what cost? What does that even mean? She murmured, her finger tracing the lines as they flowed like dark rivers across the page. An overwhelming sense of urgency took hold of her. She couldn't leave without understanding. A soft thud echoed from behind her, making Clara spin around. The mirror. It was now glowing, the reflection shimmering like a portal. A face began to take shape within it, fading in and out, desperate yet familiar. Clara felt her pulse quicken. Was it Eliza? "Help me," the figure whispered, its voice breaking the silence like glass shattering. "You must understand, before it consumes you." "Consume? What do you mean?" Clara breathed, her voice barely audible, the weight of fear settling like lead in her stomach. The room seemed to shrink around her, the shadows extending their cold fingers, pulling her towards madness. Just then, the realization hit her like a freight train. Eliza had been trapped here just as she was now, drawn in by the same malignant curiosity. What horrible fate awaited her if she did not escape this cycle? The mirror's surface rippled, dark currents swirling violently, and Clara sensed the power within. It was seductive, promising truths that could unravel everything she understood. But could she trust it? The air thickened, pressing down on her, urging her to make a choice, to uncover the truth at great personal risk or to flee from the darkness before it swallowed her whole. Torn, Clara glanced at the mirror once more. "What must I do?" The words slipped out, almost involuntarily. "Choose wisely," the voice echoed, stretching and twisting into something sinister, "or lose everything." In that moment of hesitation, Clara felt something change. The ground beneath her trembled as if the very remnants of the Whitmore legacy trembled at her choice. The air crackled with energy, a storm of emotion and impending doom. Her mind raced. What if she was meant to be here? What if this was about to reveal the harsh reality about her own past, tangled in with the Whitmores? Clara took a deep breath, the shadows closing in around her, and made a choice that would alter her destiny forever. At that critical juncture, she reached out to touch the mirror, knowing it could lead to either salvation or a dark truth she might not be ready to confront. Just as her fingers grazed the glass, a blinding light exploded from within, enveloping her completely. What ensued was an amalgamation of visions: her life, the Whitmore tragedy, and an unfathomable darkness awaiting behind the veil. In that flicker of brilliance, she thought she saw the truth, but now would she have the courage to face it? Before she could react, everything went black, leaving only the question hanging in the darkness. What truths were you willing to confront to save yourself? What horrors lie within the light? The world snapped back into focus, swirling shadows coiling together like the legs of a spider. Clara gasped, the air rushing into her lungs like ice-cold water. She stumbled back, her heart racing, her pulse pounding in her ears. The mirror now stood still, its glow dimmed to a haunting luster, as if it had swallowed the light whole. What happened? She whispered, her voice trembling. Had she really touched it? The question clung to her mind, but more pressing was the sensation that lingered, a weight pulling her deeper into the room. Her thoughts were muddled, images flickering like disjointed frames of a film. Fragments of laughter, screams, a child's voice crying out for help, all merging into a cacophony that rose and fell with agonizing clarity, and then she saw it. There in the corner of the chamber, a shadow stood watching her. The outline was slender, its face obscured but ever present. A chill crept down her spine, and she fought the urge to look away. Was it a figment of her imagination, or something more sinister? Clara, the whisper curled around her like smoke, soft yet piercing. You've awakened me. Clara's mind raced. She stumbled backward, almost tripping over the clutter of books and trinkets. Who are you? The words fell from her lips in a rush, each syllable soaked in fear. Your ancestor, the shadow hissed, its voice echoing with an unsettling familiarity. I have waited for you. You seek the truth of our bloodline. Why do you want me? Clara felt nausea wash over her. She wanted to run, to escape that room, but her feet felt rooted in place. What do you want? Fulfillment of a promise, it crooned, drawing closer. The shadow pulsated, flickering with a violent intensity that made her stomach lurch. A promise buried beneath years of lies. You have the power to reclaim what is rightfully ours. The tension in the room tightened like a noose. Clara struggled to think, the chaos in her mind clouding her judgment. The ancestor's presence pressed on her like a weight, thick and suffocating. Reclaim what? She asked, summoning a flicker of courage. I don't understand. I don't want this. Dare you deny your heritage? The voice swelled, a tempest of rage and sorrow. Every drop of blood that flows in your veins yearns for awakening. You are the vessel, Clara. Only you can reveal the hidden legacy of the Whitmores. Her heart raced. The very thought of it sent icy tendrils creeping through her. What legacy? Was this the truth she craved, or was it a deception too cunning to resist? She remembered the warning in the mirror, lose everything. No. Clara shook her head fervently, desperation creeping in. I won't yield to this madness. Suddenly, the shadow lunged forward, shimmering like mirage, and she felt a jolt of electric fear shoot through her. The universe seemed to crackle in the wake of its movement. You cannot escape your fate. A choice must be made. In that instant, the chamber shook once more, the ancient stones groaning under the strain. Clara remembered the books, the whispers, the lessons buried within them. As historic echoes filled her mind, she grasped at something beyond herself. Your choice defines us. The shadow screamed with a mix of fury and desperation. Taking a deep breath, Clara felt something within her stir, a flicker of defiance against the lineage that so deeply haunted her. Was she truly bound to this fate, or could she break the chains that shackled her forebears? Before she could act, the floor gave way slightly beneath her feet, a surge of energy rushing upwards, as the shadow surged toward her, its voice spiraling into a wild scream. You are my only hope. Clara closed her eyes, bracing herself for the crash of destiny, wondering what forces were truly at play. With a final, deafening roar, the singular question echoed through the chamber: could she rewrite the story that had been imprinted in her blood, or would she succumb to the very darkness she feared? The ground quaked, and Clara felt a flicker beneath her feet, as if the very fabric of the chamber was splitting. The shadow advanced, its edges bending and twisting like a living nightmare. Clara's heart thundered in her chest, wild and erratic. Panic surged through her, each breath a battle against a force that pressed against her soul. Make your choice. The shadow bellowed, fragments of its voice ricocheting off the walls. Clara opened her eyes, bracing against the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. She could feel it. The urge to run, to escape, was fierce, yet a strange compulsion halted her movements. You're tied to this, Clara, you must confront it. Forcing her breath to slow, she clenched her fists, grounding herself in the present. I am not you, she shouted, defiance weaving through her words. I'm not a vessel. I'm Clara Whitmore, not some pawn in your game. The shadow recoiled, the luminescence flickering like a dying flame. You belittle what you are. The blood calls to you, echoes down the hallways of time, it hissed, voice dripping with bitterness and longing. Revenge and power await if you just let go. Revenge? Power? The words slipped from Clara's lips, her mind racing. What are you talking about? What happened to our family? Tragedy, betrayal. A curse that stains our name. The shadow flicked closer, its tone shifting, almost pleading. Years of secrecy and suffering brought upon us by greed. But you can change it. You can reclaim what was lost. Clara puzzled over those words. Images swirled in her mind, snapping together like pieces of a broken puzzle, ancestral portraits filled with angered expressions, a fire consumed by shadows licking at the edges of her memory, sorrow that dripped from her family tree. Memories she didn't even know she had. Your abilities run deeper than you realize, the shadow continued, its voice now honeyed with promise. Harness them. Together, we can right the wrongs, avenge the silence, and establish our legacy. A prickling sensation crept along her skin as every instinct screamed at her to flee. But at what cost? To become something unrecognizable. I refuse to replace one darkness with another. The shadow paused, its form wavering like a candle's flame, uncertainty etched into its essence. You think you can break the cycle? I was doomed the moment our blood flowed. But you, Clara, you have a chance. The wind swirled, and a surge of memories threatened to cascade within her mind, vivid dreams or realities. Flickers of a past life promising power beyond measure, yet each spark burned with the potential for devastation. Just touch the surface, the shadow insisted, extending a translucent arm toward Clara. Feel it. It pulses with your power, your spirit. You could be more than you are. But the words ricocheted in her mind. More. Or lose herself utterly. As she shifted her stance, the air thickened, charged with a tremor she could almost grasp. The mirror behind her shuddered, rippling as if resonating with the conflict around her. In that heartbeat of decision, a loud crack echoed. The chamber broke apart, stones tumbling down like the raising stakes of an ancient game. Clara had to decide to embrace the darkness or forge a new path filled with uncertainty but glimmering with hope. The choice lingered in the air, heavy with consequences. As if aware of her hesitation, the shadow surged, shifting from temptation to wrath. Choose wisely, Clara. Or all shall be lost. The walls threatened to close in as Clara's mind raced. She took a step forward, heart pounding with the weight of all that had come before. Would she embrace the legacy handed to her, or resist and redefine what it meant to be a Whitmore? Before she could respond, a blinding light enveloped the room, and the chamber fell into a deafening silence. In that suspended moment, the question hung heavy in the air: what would the price of her choice be? And as the shadows receded, Clara realized that the mirror was no longer reflective, it pulsed with an energy that demanded her full attention. What was hidden behind its depth? What true legacy awaited her embrace? Clara blinked, adjusting her vision to the strange energy radiating from the mirror. Its surface shimmered like the surface of a lake, reflecting colors she couldn't quite name. An overwhelming curiosity surged within her, momentarily overshadowing her fear. The blinding light faded, replaced by a spectral glow that felt both familiar and foreign. "Clara," the shadow's voice echoed softly, its urgency laced with desperation. "You've touched the brink of your lineage. Look deeper." She inched closer to the mirror, heart racing in time with the pulse of energy. Here lay an unseen world, one filled with echoes of the past her past. What had been buried beneath layers of time and pain? Her fingers grazed the surface, and an electric shock darted through her. The mirror rippled, contorting images of her ancestors, flickering moments of pain and darkness long concealed. A figure emerged, his face twisting in shadow. A man clad in the garb of her bloodline, eyes burning with rage and sadness. "You think you have a choice?" he growled, his voice a chilling whisper. "Our destiny is written in blood, it cannot be altered." Clara reeled, her resolve beginning to splinter with doubt. "But it can be rewritten. I have the power to change it." The words spilled out, fueled by a desperate hope. "Can't I create a future without the curse?" "Foolish girl." He spat, eyes narrowing with contempt. "You are destined to either embrace it or watch everything crumble. Your choices only shift the weight, they do not dissolve it." The air crackled with tension. Clara's fingers trembled against the cold glass, and she fought to maintain her focus. The man's dark energy swirled around her, clawing at her sanity, whispering fears that sank like stones in her heart. "You know nothing, Clara. Forgo your hesitation. Embrace who you were meant to be." Breath hitching, she wrenched her gaze from the swirling nightmare. But it was too painful, too dark. "I refuse to drown in the past." With a sudden movement, the mirrored surface surged and fractured, scattering shards of light that pierced the gloom. Clara stumbled backward, dread closing in as the pieces shifted, revealing countless paths diverging in epic proportions, each steeped in chaos. An army of versions of herself played out, heroes, villains, a swirling vortex of destinies unclaimed. "Choose, dear Clara," came the shadow's insistent voice, now a seductive melody. "You may bathe in the shadows, or illuminate the darkness. You will be something unimaginable." Her heart raced as she stood amid the fragments. Each broken piece reflected her fears and desires, possibilities that echoed across time. It felt godlike and cursed all at once. Fighting the instinct to collapse beneath the weight of it all, she exhaled slowly, forcing herself to consider her options, but it wasn't just her life she risked, the lives of generations weighed upon her shoulders. She could feel their spirits clamoring for redemption. Did she want a legacy woven in darkness or one that offered a spark, a chance at redemption? "I refuse to be bound by your darkness," she cried, steeling herself against the pull of the shadow's promises, and just like that, the chamber shook violently, a rupture that echoed both rage and despair. In an instant, all the fragments clashed together and shot forth into the air like sparks from a fire. Clara drew back, horrified at what she had unleashed, as something colossal erupted forth from the shattered mirror. What would come from the remnants of fate's cruel game? A power for good or an unbridled vengeance? The echo of ancient laughter filled the chamber, and Clara became acutely aware that she was no longer alone. Eyes unseen watched her, sentient forces thicker than shadows aligned against her. With uncertainty and dread pooling in her stomach, she realized she had crossed a line. The choice she made now held repercussions far beyond her comprehension. What would happen when the dust settled? She took a shaky breath, aware that the terrifying journey had only just begun. What was the truth that awaited her? What legacy would she ultimately carve from the chaos? And just as she steeled herself for what lay ahead, a haunting howl pierced the silence, a cry that echoed through the darkness like a forgotten memory. Was it an omen or a warning? Clara's fate was tightly clasped within the very thing she had feared. She stepped forward, realizing the cost of her courage, the price of her defiance was yet to be revealed. What awaited her in this broken realm? Would she emerge triumphant, or succumb to the shadow's relentless grasp? The swirling shadows began to retreat, drawn back by Clara's resolve as if they hesitated in the face of her defiance. In the eerie stillness, she felt a weight lift from her chest, a flicker of hope igniting deep within. The ancient chamber heaved with tension, the air thick with unspoken histories, and her heart thundered with determination. "Bring it on," she whispered, an unexpected bravery lacing her voice. "I want to be a vessel for your darkness." With that declaration echoing in her mind, Clara felt a seismic shift within the room. The fragmented shards of fate swirled around her, caught in a cosmic dance of choice and consequence. A heavy silence enveloped her as the remnants began to coalesce, forming into tangible shapes that writhed like living creatures made of memories, the smiles, sorrows, and betrayals of her ancestors. Lines of connection fluttered through the air as the echoes revealed themselves, joyful laughter, a child's innocent dreams, and cries of despair twisted into one another under the weight of the family's legacy. "You are more than we were," murmured a voice, soft yet commanding. It was Eliza's, piercing through the chaos, an anchor amidst the storm. "You have the power to rewrite our fates." Clara reached out, fingertips brushing against the ethereal glow rising in the chamber, the glow of her ancestry, the very heartbeat of the Whitmore line. "I can face the darkness if I must," she promised, gathering her strength, "but I will not let it consume me." The mirror flickered violently in response, its surface twisting into an image of the past, the Whitmore estate on fire, engulfed in flames of turmoil and despair. Fragments of Eliza's pain lay scattered among the ashes. "This is the cycle," the voice swept through the air, "one generation hides from the truth while the next seeks it. But you can end it." With every pulse, Clara felt the shadows recede, a palpable energy surrounded her, drawing strength from her spirit. "I can't do this alone," she called into the depths, her voice a rallying cry. "Will you help me break this cycle?" The shadows shivered, coiling back nervously. Then, the air crackled with a new energy, the ancestors rising as whispers turned to echoes of encouragement. A luminescent figure grew amidst the darkness, a soft and inviting glow emanating from within. Clara stepped forward, drawn by its warmth. It was as though the past and the present fused together, birthing a new legacy born of bravery rather than fear. "Show me how," she urged, her voice steady despite the quaking foundation. The embodiment of her ancestor took shape, reaching out, illuminating the path toward awakening not just her instincts but the spirits tethered by sorrow. The chamber erupted with a verve of colors, glistening like a million shooting stars, memories surging forth, recounting tales of courage, love, and redemption. Clara shifted her gaze to the swirling depths around her. "Together," she whispered. A collective breath filled the chamber, and in that singular moment, Clara made a choice not merely to confront the shadows but to transform them. As she grasped the radiant figure's hand, she felt an overwhelming wave crash down, a tidal force that shook the very core of her existence. It surged through her, igniting her courage and self-belief. "Show me the truth." The chamber shattered into beams of radiant light, illuminating the darkness that had clung to her bloodline for generations. The howls of anguish were drowned by a symphony of whispers, metamorphosing into a cacophony of hope. Clara's resolve enveloped her, and the truth began to tumbling forth like a prophecy fulfilled, tales of power misused, haunting betrayals turning to resolution, vengeance giving way to forgiveness. As the luminous energy encircled her, Clara caught glimpses of her family's future, a tapestry woven with the vibrant threads of healing, love blooming from despair. Her ancestors watched with pride, casting aside their chains, inviting her to reclaim their legacy. She stood tall, heart racing, breath steady, there was no turning back now. With each word spoken through her newly woven truth, each flicker of potential, Clara unlocked the power held tight within their stories. "I am Clara Whitmore," she declared with newfound strength, "and I choose hope." The very walls echoed with forgotten truths, shining brighter with each step she took. The memories transformed from haunting shadows to guiding lights, illuminating the path ahead, a shared journey of revelation. And then, like a final thunderclap, the mirror shattered, dispersing the darkness across the realm. The release echoed through Clara's soul, lifting not just herself but also the weight carried by her ancestors, forever changing the course of the Whitmore legacy. In that destruction birthed life anew. Together, Clara and her lineage soared into the light of a new dawn. With each heartbeat, Clara felt the threads of the past intertwining with her own future. She had not only survived, she had emerged victorious. As the echoes of her ancestors faded, gently setting her upon the earth, Clara knew they were watching with acceptance, rejuvenated spirits forging ahead with her. They had risen beyond their darkness, and now it was her turn to carve a legacy, one of truth, one of love, and one that would never again let shadows dictate the fate of her family. With a smile, Clara stepped back into the world, ready to embrace a future filled with boundless possibilities. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to keep up with more thrilling adventures like this one. Smash that like button to show your support and keep this story alive. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about Clara's journey. What would you have done in her shoes? And don't wait even one more second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Your voice matters. Let us build an amazing community of fans together.